Greetings, Gilliam the Rogue here, once again back with an Elder Scrolls Online discussion video. Today we're going to be talking about stamina build changes in the Summerset patch. So this patch has brought with it a lot of stuff, going over two-handed set bonuses, or two-handed weapons now counting as double set bonuses, jewelry crafting in the iterations of traits has changed a lot. Now we have a lot of diversity between those two, and then a lot of balance changes with the nerfs to Night Mother's Gaze and Sunderflame, and access to penetration, and so on. So this video is going to try and give you guys an idea of how we are adjusting and any major shifts in the metas for stamina builds in the Summerset patch. So I guess we'll first start by talking about sets in general. So we'll first start off by talking about Night Mother's Gaze and Sunderflame. So Night Mother's Gaze used to have a unique penetration debuff or a unique armor reduction debuff, and so did Sunderflame. Sunderflame was like 3360 at gold, and Night Mother's was 2580 at gold. And those were unique. They could be applied and would stack with major, minor, breach, and fracture, or fracture in the sense that since they were armor reduction or physical reduction. Now they have been reworked. So Night Mother's Gaze still works by whenever you crit a target, you apply an armor reduction debuff on them, but now it is major fracture. So this is a nerf for group play, but a buff for solo play if your class lacks major fracture. So classes like the Stamina Templar and the Stamina Sorcerer especially see a really nice boon out of this in places like Maelstrom Arena, solo play, etc. While in group play, it is highly redundant. It still has the AoE potential that a lot of skills don't have. The only other forms of AoE major fracture in the game are Noxious Breath, which is a pretty small conal, and Subterranean Assault, which is another conal, but it's a little bit bigger. So there isn't a lot of access to AoE penetration. So Night Mothers will still have a tiny few uses, mainly when dealing with large groups. And then Sunderflame has also been reworked. So before it was that 3360 armor reduction, and then an additional 740 flame damage at gold with no CP. On your fully charged heavy attacks. Now it applies minor fracture and breach, so physical and spell reduction, and deals 4,000 extra damage whenever you heavy attack. So it's seen a massive loss in the regard of bringing a huge amount of penetration to your stamina builds, but it now also acts as a pseudo power of the light, which lasts a little bit longer and is applied through heavy attacks, meaning you can have it on multiple enemies a little bit easier, but it's still going to be mainly single target. So this is mainly going to be for groups that do not have a Stamina Templar in the group, or their healers don't want to run Power of the Light because it is pretty stamina cost intensive. So again, in rating, this is a pretty big loss of penetration. We're losing about 5,000, a little bit more than that, actually about 5,700 or so, which is a pretty large DPS loss. We're talking over 10% of our damage loss from penetration, but we can now access it through other means. So this pretty much is taking away from diversity by limiting the options in terms of how much pen you can access or what sources you need to access. So in replacement of these sets, we will now be running the Lover Mundus Stone and a little bit more points into champion points, or we can use Sharpen Trait and run more CP, or we can put everything into CP, or we can have like Lover and Sharpen and then put no points into CP. You can kind of figure it out. Again, penetration cap is 18,200. It is no longer will we ever have 18,500. So 18.2 is the maximum in dungeons and trial environments. You want to always be trying to hit that number between reduction and self-penetration. You're going to have to add it up with a calculator, or use an add-on like Harvin's Stats or something of the sort. But so penetration, really important. You always want to try and be at pen cap or reduction, whatever you want to call it. So definitely check out Lover Mundus Stone or Sharpen Trait or whatever. Now transitioning into gear sets. So since we're losing Sunder and Night Mothers, we're not going to be running those anymore. We can also run Twin Fang Snake or Spriggans. Those also have a lot of penetration. Twin Fang Snake is much better. It gives more penetration. It has a better 2 through 4 piece bonus, but it is BOP. Spriggans is a little bit less penetration. It's only active on 1 bar. Twin Fang, you can kind of retain it on 2 bars for a little bit of time. It's pretty nice, but it's BOE. So Spriggans is easier to get, and then you can get Twin Fang from Sanctum Ophidia, or I think any of the Craglorn trials, but it mainly drops in Sanctum Ophidia. So that's going to be another strong contender. Again, hit that 18,200 pen cap, and then don't worry about pen after that, so you're going to have to figure it out. In terms of other gear sets coming with Summerset, Reliquin, a new set from Cloudrest Trial. I have it right here. There is a perfected and a non-perfected. Non-perfected drops in normal, perfected drops in veteran. I believe +0 drops weapons, +1 and 2 drops armor, and +3 drops jewelry. So if you're trying to get perfected jewelry, you only can get that through hard mode Cloud Rest, which is pretty difficult. But everything else, you don't need to necessarily do that. Veteran Cloud Rest is a little bit obviously harder than normal, but it's not incredibly difficult. You can do +0 and +1 relatively easily, so you can get your hands on the perfected version. But the only difference between these two is a max stamina bonus on the 5-piece on the perfected. The non-perfected just doesn't have that. There's no tooltip differences, nothing else. You just get a little bit extra stamina, which is about 1,000 or 2,000 DPS in a raid environment. So it's not huge, but it is definitely something to be looking out for. So Reliquin's really, really strong. However, it is purely single target. So the way that it works is you light and heavy attack a target, it puts a dot on them, and it ramps up 20 dots. So you need to do 20 light or heavy attacks against the target to get maximum stacks. And if you stop light or heavy attacking that target, it'll fall off. So if you're doing a high mobility fight where you have to constantly swap targets like Asylum Sanctorum or Cloud Rest, probably not going to be that great. But in situations where you're trying to nuke down a single target boss like the Serpent or the Mage or Manticora or anything like that, then this set's going to be really good. But again, in AoE situations, not going to be good because it has no AoE potential because you can only light or heavy attack a single target. So this is going to be a pretty niche set. I call it a target dummy hero set. Unfortunately, I would have loved to see some changes to it, but it's still incredibly powerful. One of the strongest sets in the game. It does crazy high DPS. But again, fits into single target or low mobility fights only. Otherwise, Twin Fang Snake, again, works really well, helps you get at that pen cap. The other set is not a new set, but it has allowed us to be run with the retrading, and that is advancing Yokeda. So mechanical acuity has been nerfed. It is still decent on some classes. It's just no longer the best on everything. So to take its place, we want crit again. So that means daggers are strong, Khajiit are a little bit better, and stuff like that. And advancing Yokeda, or the Berserking Warrior, drops in Hellraw Citadel, is a way to get a lot of crit. You get 2,000 weapon critical at 5 stacks whenever you deal melee damage, which is pretty much any stamina build. That's the primary bulk of your damage. You're going to get 2,000 weapon critical, and then you have an additional 833 and 833 on the 2 and 4 piece. You get a lot of crit out of this set, better than mechanical acuity, if you can keep it up. The way that you generally want to run this is you want to run jewelry and dual wield. You can retain it because it lasts for 5 seconds. So if you are on your back bar, try and only have 4 dots on your back bar. That way you can keep this up at 100%. If you have a lot of abilities like the Stamina Nightblade on your back bar, it will fall off, but it'll still be really, really good. Otherwise, you can use other sets. Hunting's Rage you can't go wrong with. They're still going to be using sets like Reliquins is really good, Advancing Yokeda, Twin Fang Snake. There's tons of different stuff. You can use Spriggans again, as we talked about earlier. You can use War Machine if you are a Stamina Templar or Nightblade, really good for that group utility. The other set that we have access to is also called Ravaging. However, it is only good because it is bugged and proccing off of Reliquin. So if you're using Ravaging, you're going to want to use Reliquin. Reliquin procs Ravaging for whatever reason, not intended, but it hasn't been bug fixed. We put in a bunch of tickets. But it's really, really nice. It's not the best for anything, but it does have nice a health bonus on there because our health is going to be pretty low with this. If you're running Dubious, it'll be higher. This will make you really, really tanky. You want to, again, run dual wield and jewelry with this. You can stick with Acuity. You're still going to want to run jewelry and dual wield, or 3 armor and dual wield. But pretty much these sets you only want active on 1 bar, and then if you're running Reliquin, you always want it active. If you're running like Twin Fang and Advancing Yokeda, have Twin Fang permanently active and Yokeda on jewelry and dual wield. In terms of monster sets, if you're doing pure single target and you're using Reliquin, Celine's is the best because, again, busted, proccing off Reliquin. If your target is really, really big, then Veladreth will still win because it's still able to hit the target more than once. Again, this is a bug. We might not see it fixed because that's how it's always been working, but it is not intended. Otherwise, Krags is really good if you need a little bit of extra penetration. It still does decent single target, but Selene and Veladreth are going to be better in a raid environment and stuff like that. Otherwise, you can use Stormfist if your class really lacks sustain. In terms of traits, so the rebalancing of stamina and Magicka going into your light and heavy attacks. With stamina builds, it's still not enough to run Infused, so we're still going to all run Divines on our on our armor. We're still going to be running Nirnhone main hand and Infused offhand. If you want to use Sharpened, you will be using Infused main hand and Sharpened offhand. That way, you're getting a lot out of it. You're getting a huge bulk of damage here, and Infused just makes more sense on your main hand because that's where your big damaging enchant is. Sharpened doesn't see any difference on your dual wield bar, but you're pretty much only going to be using Nirnhone, Sharpened, or Infused. Infused if on your offhand if you're using Nirn main hand, otherwise Infused main hand with Sharpen offhand. Always Nirn on your back bar. You can use Sharpen on your back bar as well, but Nirn is better. Still using damage health poisons, still really good. Poison and Berserker enchant on our dual wield. Pretty much not much is changing in that regard, but jewelry. So jewelry for traits, it is ideal to have 2 Infused and 1 Bloodthirsty if you're trying to output as much damage as you can. However, you will get better DPS if you are newer or you are not, or you are progressing through a raid with 3 Infused instead of Bloodthirsty. Because remember, Bloodthirsty only activates and execute if you're not getting to execute because you're doing a new trial or something of the sort, or you're still new, getting used to it. Then you don't want to have Bloodthirsty. Just stick with triple infused. But triple infused is better. Triple robust is still the classic. You get a lot of nice sustain out of it, but you can still sustain with triple infused. Infused is better, but it's only by a tiny little bit, roughly 100 DPS per trait. It might be a little bit more in a rated environment, maybe 200 or 300, because there's just more amps to make that difference noticeable, but it's really, really small. Triple infused versus triple robust isn't a huge difference, but again, you will get more damage and healing out of triple infused as a stamina build because we don't have amps to it, and that's even as a red guard and a stamina sorcerer. So hopefully this has kind of given you an idea of where you are headed. I do want to talk about a few off-meta things. So if you're really struggling with sustain, I highly recommend the infused cost reduction or infused stamina recovery combination. That alone will give you a lot of sustain. Really, really nice. It'll even let you run blue food in many situations, so you're kind of losing DPS to gain a little bit of DPS and tankiness out of it. So there's a lot of options in that regard to get a little bit of health or get a little bit of tankiness or get a little bit of damage. You can play around with the traits a lot. If you're an Argonian, infused cost or potion cooldown reduction is really, really good because you're going to get more resources from your potion and from your Argonian passive, so that'll give you resource management as well. However, usually not going to be an Argonian in PV DPS, but hey, off meta stuff, there's a lot of different sets. Again, I haven't mentioned every set, but there's just because there's so many different things. If you're interested in why I look like this or what these sets are, it is Sapiarch, helmet, chest, belt, gloves and legs, and then I have Militant Order boots and Regatta shoulders, and then Pandonian swords and bow. So I know everyone's going to ask about that. So there it is. So hopefully this has helped. There's been a lot of changes. There's going to be more discussion to come. I'll be updating guides as we go through, so bear with me. Sorry I've been gone. I'm still a little bit sick. You could probably kind of tell, but again, hope you guys enjoyed, but I'll see you guys around. As always, a massive shout out to these phenomenal people who help me stay afloat financially in and out of game, help me give feedback, test videos, donate stuff to me in game. I really appreciate all of the support. Make sure to check out the links in the description if you're interested in doing such. It's never necessary, but I really do appreciate it. But until next time, I'll see you guys around.